All right, so today we're diving into something that I think a lot of our listeners can relate to.
Oh, yeah.
Parenting. It's this thing where you pour in just endless amounts of time and energy.
Yeah,
And let's be real, a ton of money.
absolutely.
Raising kids. It really is a lot.
It is.
It's funny because those lyrics from Sonia Spence's No Charge, for the 9 months I carried you, no charge. For the food, the shelter, and the clothes, there's no charge. For the cost through the years, there's no charge.
Right?
That really captures that feeling,
It does.
This massive undertaking that you just willingly
Sign up for.
And
it's fascinating, right? Because, sleepless nights, constant demands, and the very real possibility that your teenager will treat you like you're the most embarrassing human being on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
This fundamental urge to have children persists in most people.
Right. It's such a head scratcher.
It is.
We make these huge sacrifices, often with no guarantee of any return on investment, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what is driving this incredibly powerful desire to procreate?
Well, if we think about it from a very fundamental evolutionary perspective, the initial answer is fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
It's passing on the genes that have managed to survive for billions of years.
Right.
It's the ultimate long game.
Survival of the genetic code. Got it.
Yeah.
But do you ever think, wouldn't it be great if there was a way to just have the genetic continuation without all the heavy lifting of actually,
Oh, sure.
raising kids?
That is a fascinating point. And nature, in its ingenious way, has found a shortcut. Nest parasites.
Oh, yeah.
Birds that have evolved to completely outsource the whole parenting business to other species.
Yeah, the ultimate childcare dodgers of the bird world.
Absolutely.
Cuckoos, right.
Cuckoos are the poster child for this, that's right. But what's fascinating is that not all cuckoos are absentee parents.
Oh.
About 60% of cuckoo species actually raise their own young. It's the other 40% that have really honed the art of avian freeloading.
And honed is an understatement.
Yeah.
I was reading about the way some of them operate. It's almost like a feathered James Bond mission.
Yeah.
There was this one called the murderous cuckoo.
Yeah, murderous cuckoo. Let's delve into their rather dramatic strategy.
Okay.
So during breeding season, the female cuckoo is scouting potential host nests, waiting for the perfect moment.
Right.
Then she executes a swift intervention. She'll target a nest, say a reed warbler's, quickly remove one of the warbler's eggs, and replace it with her own.
Just like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Speed and stealth are essential here.
Right.
We're talking a window of opportunity as short as 5 to 120 seconds.
Wow.
It's the avian equivalent of a highly efficient heist. Get in, swap the goods, and get out before anyone notices.
Wow. It seems so risky.
It is. And once the egg is swapped, the cuckoo is off to find her next unsuspecting host.
So efficient. And such a good deal for the cuckoo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no nest building, no incubation, no hungry mouths to feed.
Absolutely. It is a very profitable reproductive strategy for them.
Yep.
A single common cuckoo female can lay upwards of 25 eggs in a single breeding season.
That's a lot.
It's a far greater number than your typical songbird could ever manage to raise on its own.
Right.
This high reproductive output is achievable only by completely outsourcing parental care.
Right.
So the core evolutionary advantage here is not just laying an egg, it's completely offloading the immense burden of parenting. That's a pretty significant cheat code, wouldn't you say?
25 eggs, that's a huge number.
Yeah.
But how do they actually get away with it?
Right.
On such a large scale?
Yeah.
Wouldn't the host birds notice this, giant foreign eggs suddenly appearing in their clutch?
That's a great question, and it brings us to what we might call the second law of cheating.
Okay.
To pull off this deception, the cuckoo has become incredibly adept at exploiting cognitive loopholes in its hosts.
So what kind of birds are we talking about here?
Well, these hosts include some really common Eurasian birds: reed warblers, dunnocks, European robins, pied wagtails, meadow pipits, to name a few.
Okay, so cognitive loopholes, right?
Yeah.
Like what kind of mental blind spots are these birds working with?
Well, evolution often equips organisms with just the bare minimum abilities that are necessary for survival.
Yeah.
And for many birds, the precise size of their eggs simply wasn't that critical of a factor.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of evolutionary pressure to develop a highly refined sense of egg size.
So they're basically
Yeah.
size blind when it comes to their own eggs.
Sort of.
That seems counterintuitive.
It might seem that way, but it's a real testament to the efficiency of natural selection. Think about Nico Tinbergen's classic experiments.
Okay. Yeah.
He presented geese and plovers with artificial eggs of all sorts of shapes, sizes, and colors.
Right.
And what he discovered was that these birds had a surprisingly loose definition of what their own eggs should look like. As long as the overall shape was right, they'd happily incubate pretty much anything.
So a goose trying to incubate a volleyball.
That's the one.
I remember that.
It sounds absurd, a goose trying to sit on a volleyball.
Ah.
But Tinbergen's point was that the goose is operating with a relatively simple rule. Roundish object in or near my nest are my eggs. And in the goose's evolutionary history, that rule, it almost never led it astray.
Volleyballs don't typically appear in the wild.
Not typically, no.
Okay, so how does this benefit the cuckoo?
Well, the reed warbler, which is a very frequent target of cuckoo parasitism, likely operates with a similarly simple rule, probably focused on egg shape.
Okay.
And this mental shortcut creates that opening for the cuckoo egg, which is often quite a bit larger, to go unnoticed.
So the cuckoo's exploiting this second law loophole in the host's, cognitive programming.
Exactly.
It's kind of like hacking into the warbler's basic instincts.
Precisely. But it's important to remember this isn't a static situation. There's this back and forth, this constant pressure between the cuckoo's deceptive tactics and the reed warbler's attempts to defend itself.
Okay.
And this dynamic is driven by what we call frequency-dependent selection.
Frequency-dependent selection.
Yeah.
Okay, break that down for me.
Okay, imagine this. If cuckoo parasitism is rare in a particular area, then for a reed warbler, investing precious cognitive resources in becoming an expert identifier of foreign eggs would actually be a waste of energy.
Makes sense.
It's resources that could be better used for finding food or raising their young.
Right. Why develop a fancy egg recognition system if you're hardly ever going to run into a foreign egg?
Exactly. However, if the warblers in an area are frequently targeted by cuckoos, then suddenly the ability to spot and eject those alien eggs becomes a critical survival skill.
Yeah.
It directly impacts their chances of successfully raising their own offspring.
Okay, so it's kind of like the more they get tricked, the better they get at spotting the tricksters.
In a way, yes. Evolution, even though it's a gradual process, exerts pressure on the warblers to adapt. But individual warblers also seem to employ a more immediate probabilistic strategy.
Okay.
If their nests are frequently parasitized, say around 30% of the time,
Yeah.
they become more likely to just reject any eggs that looks even slightly suspicious.
Right.
It's a better safe than sorry approach. But if parasitism is rare, around 6%, they actually become less inclined to reject eggs to avoid mistakenly tossing out their own.
Oh, so they're unconsciously calculating the odds.
Yeah, it's pretty
Wow.
sophisticated for a little bird.
Yeah, it is.
Nick Davies, his research provided a lot of evidence for this probabilistic behavior in warblers. They don't have a conscious thought process, obviously, but their cognitive systems seem to be attuned to the level of threat and adjust their behavior accordingly.
So we've got the warblers' evolving defenses, right? What about the cuckoos? What are they doing to kind of maintain their advantage in this arms race?
So the second law of cheating provides a clue.
Okay.
One key strategy for the cuckoo is to produce better egg mimics.
Oh, wow.
Eggs that are so similar in size, shape, and color to the host's eggs that the warbler just can't distinguish them.
Oh, so it's like an ongoing, like a forgery competition with the highest stakes imaginable.
Exactly. Another tactic for the cuckoo is to find new, less cognitively defended host species,
Oh, yeah.
birds that haven't yet evolved very strong defenses against parasitism.
Interesting.
This can have ripple effects throughout a local bird community as the cuckoo expands its range of targets. And interestingly, this doesn't necessarily benefit the original host, the reed warbler,
Right.
if it ends up losing its hard-won egg discrimination abilities because the cuckoo pressure has lessened in its specific area.
Right. So even if the cuckoo shifts its focus, the warbler could still end up more vulnerable again.
Right.
That's a tough evolutionary spot to be in.
It is. And then to add another layer of complexity, individual cuckoos often specialize in parasitizing particular host species
Oh, wow.
and mimicking their specific eggs. This specialization reduces competition among cuckoos and prevents them from being a jack of all trades, master of none when it comes to egg mimicry.
It makes a lot of sense to specialize in a competitive landscape like that.
Yeah.
But, getting the egg into the nest,
Right.
that's just the first step, right?
It is.
What happens after that?
Well, the next crucial challenge for the cuckoo egg is hatching first.
Right.
If it hatches after the host's own chicks, it will be at a significant disadvantage in the competition for food.
Right.
And given that the cuckoo egg is often larger, you'd expect it to take longer to develop.
So how do they hatch first?
They have a couple of remarkable adaptations.
Okay.
One is to lay their egg in a nest where the host is still in the process of laying her own eggs,
Oh, yeah.
effectively buying some crucial developmental time. The second is that cuckoo embryos exhibit faster embryonic development than you'd expect for their size. And some nest parasites, like certain cuckoos and honey guides, have even evolved the ability to pre-incubate their eggs internally,
Oh, wow.
giving their offspring a significant head start before they even reach the host nest.
So they're like internally pre-incubating.
That's right.
That's wild.
Right.
Okay, so the cuckoo chick hatches first.
Mm-hmm.
Now what? It's still bigger than the host chicks, right?
Right.
How does it make sure it gets enough food from its smaller foster parents?
Well, this is where things take a bit of a brutal turn. The cuckoo chick's strategy for ensuring its survival is to monopolize the food supply by physically ejecting all of the host's eggs and any subsequently hatched chicks from the nest.
Oh, wow.
It literally pushes them out one by one, leaving itself as the sole recipient of the foster parents' efforts.
That's ruthless.
It is.
And the foster parents are just watching this happen.
They appear utterly bewildered, watching their own offspring or unhatched eggs being tossed out by this much larger interloper.
That's sad.
It is. And despite this destructive behavior, the cuckoo chick then transforms into this, seemingly innocent, incredibly demanding ball of fluff, begging and chirping incessantly, flapping its wings to stimulate the foster parents to keep bringing food until it's strong enough to fly away.
So they're infiltrating the nest.
Mm-hmm.
They're hatching first, eliminating the competition.
Right.
Is there anything else the cuckoo does to kind of secure its future?
Actually, there is. The cuckoo has a third key strategy: exploiting loopholes in the warbler's learning process, specifically imprinting. You see, reed warblers, like many other birds, establish recognition of their chicks through imprinting.
Right.
This rapid and often irreversible form of learning that occurs very early in life.
Like the ducklings imprinting on the first moving thing they see.
Precisely. And here's the insidious part. If a first-time warbler mother happens to be imprinted by a cuckoo chick, she will subsequently identify only cuckoo chicks as her own offspring.
Oh, no.
And she'll reject any of her biological chicks that might hatch later.
That's heartbreaking for the warbler. So why hasn't this just led to warblers evolving the ability to recognize their own chicks?
Well, you see, if this imprinting mishap happens relatively infrequently, the overall warbler population might not suffer enough of a fitness cost to drive the evolution of complex chick recognition. The simpler rule, any chick in my nest is my baby, still works the majority of the time.
So it's a risky gamble for the individual warbler, but maybe a statistically sound strategy for the species as a whole.
Exactly.
Wow, this cuckoo-warbler dynamic is such a powerful illustration of evolution in action, isn't it?
It truly is. And the source reminds us that Darwin himself was awestruck by the grandeur of life's evolution, leading to endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful. We often focus on things like predator-prey interactions or competition between males for mates as drivers of diversity. But this dynamic between cheating and counter-cheating, it's another incredibly significant yet sometimes overlooked evolutionary force.
So how does this cheating arms race lead to greater biodiversity and complexity?
Well, think of it like any ongoing competition, a game of chess, for example. The constant need to outwit your opponent fuels innovation on both sides.
Right.
A new cheating tactic emerges, then there's pressure for a counter tactic, then maybe a counter tactic, and so on.
Right.
Over time, this process generates this theoretically endless array of strategies, which in biology manifest as new behaviors, physiological adaptations, physical characteristics, even cognitive abilities.
So the cuckoo and the warbler are just one example of a much broader phenomenon.
Precisely. The common cuckoo, it just offers a glimpse. Over 120 bird species have evolved into professional nest parasites. It's a diverse group found across the globe, including cowbirds, parasitic finches, even the black-headed duck.
That's so many different avian tricksters. And I imagine they've developed all sorts of unique methods of exploiting the system.
Absolutely. The source details some really fascinating variations. For example, great spotted cuckoos sometimes operate cooperatively, like a Bonnie and Clyde duo.
Whoa.
The male will create a diversion by launching a mock attack on the magpie hosts, while the female seizes the opportunity to sneak in and lay her egg.
So teamwork makes the dream work, even for parasites.
Indeed. And then you have have honey-guide chicks in Africa, which are even more hardcore than common cuckoo chicks. Instead of simply pushing out the host eggs, they possess this specialized billhook
Oh, what?
that they use to actually stab and kill the host's eggs or newly hatched chicks.
Wow, a billhook just for eliminating the competition.
Right.
That's intense.
It ensures the honey-guide chick has exclusive access to the food provided by its foster parents. And parasitic chicks in general, they've really become masters of manipulation. They often employ louder, more persistent begging calls to trigger the host's parental instincts. Some even use physical mimicry. Hawk cuckoo chicks in Japan have these bright yellow patches on their wings that they flash to mimic the gaping mouths of hungry chicks, effectively superstimulating their foster parents to feed them even more.
So the hosts aren't completely defenseless in all of this, are they?
They're not.
They must have evolved some countermeasures.
They have, and some of these defenses, they don't require complex cognition.
Oh,
The superb fairy wren in Australia, for instance, has evolved a brilliant low-tech solution. Before her chicks hatch, the mother sings a unique password to her eggs, which her own chicks learn while still in the shell, before the cuckoo chicks have a chance to hatch and learn it. After hatching, if a chick doesn't know the password, it doesn't get fed.
so like a vocal password for survival.
Exactly.
That's amazing. It's like a biological security system to make sure only family gets the resources.
That's a great way to put it. Now, we've been talking a lot about specialist nest parasites that target specific host species. What about the generalists, like the brown-headed cowbird, which parasitizes over 200 different species?
Right. How do they possibly succeed against such a diverse range of hosts, mimicking the eggs of that many different birds?
Right.
This doesn't seem feasible.
It's not. So the cowbird has adopted a completely different and rather forceful strategy, a form of extortion. They've essentially become the bullies of the avian world. The female cowbird, she will lay her egg in a host's nest and then keep a close watch on it.
Oh, yeah.
If the host dares to reject the parasitic egg, the cowbird will return and destroy the entire nest,
Oh, wow.
eggs and chicks included.
So it's like, nice nest you have here. Be ashamed if something happened to it.
Precisely. It's a classic carrot and stick approach. The stick is the complete loss of the host's reproductive investment.
Right.
The carrot, if you can call it that, is the chance for the host to still raise their own chicks alongside the cowbird's offspring.
Oh.
From an evolutionary standpoint, the host is often better off just accepting the cowbird egg,
Wow.
even if it means raising fewer of their own young, rather than risking complete destruction of their nest.
That's a tough decision.
Studies have shown that birds who reject cowbird eggs end up raising significantly fewer of their own chicks overall.
Wow. So it's this like forced evolutionary calculation.
It is.
It's fascinating how these parasitic strategies have evolved. This isn't just limited to interactions between different species, right?
That's right.
You mentioned something in the source about parasitism within the same species, too.
Right. So within species, nest parasitism is actually even more common than between species,
Oh,
observed in over 230 bird species. It's a much simpler strategy because you don't have to invest in any elaborate deception or worry about host defenses.
yeah.
You can simply lay some of your eggs in another individual's nest of the same species.
So offloading some of your parental workload onto your neighbors.
Exactly. And, nest parasitism isn't exclusive to birds either.
Oh, right.
It's found in other animal groups too. Amphibians, fish, insects, particularly social insects like cuckoo bees, which
Yeah.
infiltrate the nests of other bee species and
Right.
essentially replace their young with their own.
This whole world of cheating and counter-cheating in nature
Yeah.
is way more intricate than I ever realized.
But it is.
And the source even suggests that this evolutionary arms race might be linked to the development of something as complex as social intelligence.
It's a fascinating connection.
Yeah. How does that work?
Well, the constant pressure to outwit others, to detect deception, and to navigate complex social interactions can be a powerful driving force for the evolution of cognitive abilities. And the source introduces this idea using a classic cognitive puzzle called the Wasson selection task.
Oh, right. The one with the cards and the rule about letters and numbers.
That's the one.
I could never quite wrap my head around that one.
Yeah, you're not alone. Most people can't. The abstract version, where you have to verify the rule, if a card has a D on one side, then it has a 3 on the other, typically has a very high failure rate. But then when you present the same underlying logic in a more concrete social context,
Right.
like the rule about drinking alcohol in a bar, suddenly people perform much better.
Right. The beer, Coke, 25-16 scenario.
That's the one.
That one's so much easier to understand. You instinctively know that you have to check the beer drinker and the person who looks underage.
Exactly. And this really suggests that our brains might have evolved to be particularly good at navigating social rules and identifying potential cheaters.
Right.
And the source proposes that this aptitude for social problem solving might be a key factor in the evolution of intelligence itself.
So intelligence isn't just about solving abstract puzzles. It's also deeply connected to our ability to navigate the social world.
Absolutely. Intelligence, or cognitive ability, is fundamentally the capacity for learning and problem solving.
Hmm.
While unpredictable physical environments can certainly drive its evolution, the social environment can be even more dynamic and complex.
Right.
Social animals face this dual challenge of adapting to their physical surroundings and the ever-shifting landscape of their social interactions. This can lead to the development of both individual and collective intelligence.
Like collective intelligence as in like an ant colony, right?
Hmm.
Where the whole colony exhibits this remarkable problem-solving ability, even if individual ants aren't particularly bright on their own.
Exactly. In highly social insects, close kinship ties minimize conflicts of interest, leading to these highly organized societies focused on collective success.
Right.
But in societies where individuals have both shared and competing interests, like many bird and mammal groups,
Yeah.
individual intelligence becomes more important for navigating social dynamics and maximizing individual success.
So our ability to distinguish allies from adversaries, to cooperate effectively, and maybe even to engage in, a little bit of strategic deception,
Mm-hmm.
that's where social intelligence comes in.
Exactly. And it might explain why we often perform better on real-world social reasoning tasks like detecting cheating than on these more abstract logical puzzles.
But what about brain size? I always thought animals that are considered smarter, tend to have larger brains.
Well, it's not quite that straightforward. Brain size alone isn't a perfect predictor of intelligence across all species. Whales, for example, have much larger brains than humans.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they're more intelligent in every aspect. The brain has numerous functions beyond higher-level cognition, regulating bodily functions, processing sensory information, controlling movement, and so on. However, within certain groups, like primates, there does appear to be a correlation between brain size, particularly the neocortex, the part of the brain involved in higher-level thinking, and social factors, especially the complexity of social relationships.
So the cognitive demands of maintaining complex social bonds might have been a key driver in the evolution of larger brains in primates.
That's the essence of the social brain hypothesis.
Okay.
Living in larger, more intricate societies requires more cognitive horsepower to keep track of relationships, understand social dynamics, navigate potential conflicts.
Right.
And the frequency and depth of social engagement seem to be key here. Simply aggregating in large numbers or having a rigid dominance hierarchy, that doesn't necessarily lead to a larger neocortex. It's this nuanced web of social interactions that seem to drive brain evolution.
The source mentions something called Machiavellian intelligence. That sounds a bit...
Manipulative.
Yeah.
It can carry negative connotations.
Right.
But in this context, primatologist Richard Byrne coined the term to describe social intelligence specifically focused on, distinguishing between collaborators and cheaters, and effectively manipulating others when it serves one's own interests.
Okay.
Studies have shown a correlation between the frequency of tactical deception observed in primates and the relative size of their neocortex.
So it's about being socially astute enough to outmaneuver rivals.
Yeah.
And that requires having some understanding of what others are thinking, right?
Yeah.
Theory of mind.
Exactly. Theory of mind, the ability to understand that other individuals have their own thoughts, feelings, beliefs, desires that may differ from your own, is absolutely crucial for intentional manipulation. And research suggests that chimpanzees, bonobos, and orangutans, they possess a degree of theory of mind. And we see this in human children, too, as they mature. Franz Dual has this great anecdote about an alpha chimpanzee faking a tantrum to gain support from the group.
Oh, wow.
Perfectly illustrates this Machiavellian maneuvering.
That's really clever.
It is.
So it sounds like being a master of social manipulation would be a pretty surefire path to social success.
You would think so, but not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Machiavellianism might seem like a direct route to power, but in reality, individuals with strongly Machiavellian personality traits aren't actually any more cognitively intelligent or better at mind games than the average person.
Really?
They simply have a different set of priorities, often focused on self-gain, which can often be counterproductive in the long run, leading to a breakdown of trust and social support.
Right.
And cooperation, rather than manipulation, seems to be a primary driver for the evolution of social living. Building alliances based on trust and reciprocity is usually a much more effective strategy in the long term.
So social brain may have evolved more for fostering cooperation than for, like, ruthless manipulation.
That seems to be the prevailing view. And even Byrne himself has broadened his understanding of Machiavellian intelligence to include pro-social behaviors like friendship formation and reconciliation.
Mm.
After all, having a reliable network of allies is a significant evolutionary advantage.
Right.
But as your social circle expands, the probability of encountering individuals who might try to take advantage of you also increases,
Right.
highlighting the crucial role of social intelligence in figuring out who to trust. It's even been shown that we have a better memory for the faces of those who have cheated us in the past.
That makes perfect sense from an evolutionary perspective.
Yeah,
You want to remember who to avoid in the future.
absolutely.
But how many close relationships can we realistically maintain? I mean, our social lives can become pretty complicated.
They can, and as the size of a social group increases, the number of potential social interactions grows exponentially,
Right.
far exceeding our cognitive capacity to manage them all effectively. This likely imposes a natural limit on the number of close, trusting relationships we can handle. And this brings us to the concept of Dunbar's number.
Ah, yes, the famous limit of 150.
Exactly. Based on primate brain data and observations in human societies like the Hutterites and military units, anthropologist Robin Dunbar proposed that we can only maintain stable, meaningful relationships with approximately 150 individuals. His informal definition of a close friend, someone you wouldn't be embarrassed to join for an uninvited drink, really captures the depth of these relationships.
Right, so it's not just about knowing a lot of people. It's about the cognitive and time investment required for genuine connection and trust.
Precisely. Social grooming, in its broadest sense, takes time and energy.
Yeah.
Dunbar estimates that maintaining a cohesive social group requires a significant portion of our available time, which naturally limits the number of truly close relationships we can manage. And it's also important to note that social intelligence is distinct from other forms of cognitive intelligence, like, say, quantitative reasoning.
Mm.
You can be exceptionally gifted in mathematics, but struggle with social cues, or be incredibly adept at navigating social situations, but less inclined towards abstract problem solving. Ideally, excelling in both realms offers the greatest potential for success.
Of course. But intelligence, whether social or otherwise, can be used for less than noble purposes too, right? The source touches on that darker side of cognitive ability.
It does. Research suggests that children who exhibit higher cognitive abilities are also more likely to lie and better at detecting the lies of others.
Oh, interesting.
This combination of social and cognitive intelligence, while a normal part of development, can unfortunately contribute to more harmful behaviors in adults.
Right.
Like white-collar crime, where highly educated individuals leverage their intelligence to perpetrate complex financial frauds.
So how does this dynamic of cheating and manipulation play out in the realm of mate selection and attraction?
Well, that's where the principles of sexual selection come into play. And the source highlights the significant role of pre-existing cognitive biases in females and how males can evolve traits to exploit these biases.
Okay.
And this understanding, it really began to take shape in the 1980s.
So females have certain inherent preferences, and males can kind of evolve characteristics that push those buttons,
Exactly.
even if those preferences don't necessarily signal superior genes or overall fitness.
Precisely. Nancy Burley's groundbreaking experiment with zebra finches provided a clear example. Simply attaching artificial red leg bands to male finches, a trait that doesn't naturally occur, made them significantly more attractive to females.
Oh, wow.
Alexandra Basolo's work with swordtail fish further illustrated this. Female platyfish, a species where males lack the characteristic sword, showed a strong preference for platyfish males who had